Termina is a weird place. So weird in fact that even to this day people can still not fully agree on what it is exactly and why it looks the way it does. It's a world that lies parallel to Hyrule, an alternate dimension only accessible through a mysterious portal that serves as a bridge between the two. It's clear that Termina has existed for a very long time. It has its own culture, traditions, deities, technology, and an ancient history spanning back many ages, perhaps even as far back as that of Hyrule. Unlike Hyrule, however, the people of Termina do not worship the Triforce, nor the goddesses who created it. Instead, 4 giants who are described as guardian deities govern and watch over the land, and the Terminians still honor them to this day. Of course, over its long history, a lot of stuff happened. Kingdoms and civilizations rose and fell. Secretive tribes popped up only to vanish again without a trace, all leaving behind stories, relics, and architecture. The most famous of which being the elusive tribe who created the infamous Majora's Mask, the militaristic kingdom of Ikana and their rival faction, the Garo, and whoever built the impressive and megalithic stone tower. Each one of these relics from the past has been debated and discussed since, well, the release of Majora's Mask. In true Zelda fashion, Nintendo doesn't reveal much about the history of Termina, leaving it up to us, the fans, to craft ideas and theories. I previously covered some of the mysteries of the Kingdom of Ikana and the bordering Stone Tower. Although both ancient in their own right, it's clear that Stone Tower predates the kingdom by a significant margin. Its royal family nor any of the members of Ikana seem to have known who built it in the first place. It's safe to say that if even the people of Ikana had no idea about the origin of this imposing tower, it has to be one of, if not the oldest surviving structure in Termina. Additionally, in the same general area we find a secret shrine hidden behind a waterfall. This place too is almost a complete mystery. None of the members of the Old Kingdom mention it, so it's unclear if they knew about its existence. And similar to Stone Tower, we never find out who was responsible for its construction. So in terms of a timeline of Termina civilizations, we have Stone Tower and possibly the secret shrine, then the ancient kingdom of Ikana, and finally the current day civilizations like Clocktown, Romani Ranch, Goron Village, Zora's Domain, and so on. But there's 2 more structures that seem to find their origin all the way back in the ancient past, places that aren't talked about all that much. That being the 2 spider houses, one located in the southern swamp and another edged into the hills close to the beaches of Great Bay. A likely reason why they aren't talked about as much as some of the other locations I mentioned, like Stone Tower or the Castle of Ikana, is because they're not mandatory to finish the game's story and are instead optional side quests. They are, by all accounts, just a collectathon inside a self-contained area you probably aren't supposed to think about too much. But this wouldn't be much of a Zelda theory if we didn't do exactly that. But before we get into the finer details about the houses themselves, like the architecture, history, and the people responsible for its construction, we first need to cover the most prominent aspect about the 2: the Spider's Curse. Both houses are said to be plagued by some sort of wicked curse. However, the game never elaborates on what this curse entails exactly. We don't know how and why it exists or who placed it on these locations. All we get to see is what it does to a person once they get afflicted by it. They are horribly mutated and deformed, turning them into a sort of half-man, half-spider creature. We have seen something like this before in Ocarina of Time, a family whose greed led them to a similar fate. However, neither Ocarina or Majora's Mask ever explains what someone has to do in order to get affected by the spider's curse. In the case of the spider houses, simply wandering around inside doesn't seem to be the cause, as Link himself is not affected, though I guess it could be tied to the amount of time one spends inside. But what I find to be a more interesting and more likely option is that it could be triggered when someone attempts to take or steal something from the house and bring it with him. In the Swamp Spider house, we do see a couple of golden statues encrusted with jewels, some of which are missing. The cursed man at the entrance does admit that he was looking to get rich, and even his dog refers to his master as being filled with greed and desire. The story goes that someone gave him the Mask of Truth and told him that the instructions to get rich are inscribed somewhere inside the house, but when he went inside he ended up getting cursed. When it comes to these secret instructions, they are indeed real, but not in the form of an artifact, a treasure map, or a secret stash or anything like that. Instead, there's a gossip stone located in one of the back rooms, which when wearing the Mask of Truth reveals the details. Basically what the Gossip Stone does is it explains how to cheat the dog races being held at Romani Ranch. By wearing the mask you'll be able to read the dog's mind and find out which one is the most likely to win. And it goes without saying that exploiting a tactic like this could indeed make someone very rich very quickly. So whoever gave the mask to the cursed man was telling the truth, though it would have been nice if he didn't leave out the whole, getting cursed part. In all probability, the man was never able to find the Gossip Stone, or even if he did, he didn't realize he could talk to it. As such, he may have helped himself to some other riches inside, taking some of the jewels or perhaps something else of value. A mistake which cost him dearly and led to his current state. A similar thing could have happened to the family in Hyrule as well. From what we can gather, they too were digging up valuables by using the Shard of Agony, a magical artifact that can track down hidden caves and grottos. They too may have one day dug up something they shouldn't have and got themselves cursed in the process. The Oceanside Spider House is said to be cursed as well, however there's no one in need of saving, which does make sense. This house has been sealed off, hidden behind a wall, and clearly hasn't been visited for a very long time. No greedy visitors means no one to steal things and get themselves into trouble. There is a guy who shows up after clearing the house and he wants to use it as some sort of bomb shelter in case the moon falls, but since the curse is lifted by that time he remains okay. As okay as someone can be right before Armageddon. Poor guy. The only other aspect about the curse that's worth mentioning is that luckily, similar to Ocarina of Time, there is a cure. By defeating all the golden Skulltula inside and collecting their spirits, the curse is lifted, and anyone affected is reverted back to normal. But this clearly does require outside help, as someone in this state would probably not be able to lift the curse themselves. Luckily for this guy, Link came to the rescue. Now let's hope he learned from his mistake and doesn't try anything stupid again in the future. So that covers the curse for now. Next, let's dive into the actual structures themselves, in particular its architecture and possible history. An interesting detail is that although both locations feature a clear motif of spider imagery on doors, ceilings, statues, and other ornaments, their respective building styles are vastly different from one another. The Swamp Spider House isn't much of a house to begin with, and more akin to a shrine or some sort of temple. It has a big chapel-like central chamber, large golden spider statues, and more importantly, no signs of a living space. No furniture, beds, or anything that indicates that people actually used to live here. Some rooms also seem like they were never finished. They still look like natural caves. You can still see earth, moss, and ivy, and one room even has a tree in it surrounded by vegetation. Screw photosynthesis, I suppose. The Oceanside Spider House, on the other hand, is more in line with what you would expect from, well, a house. There's a library with an impressive amount of books, furniture like desks and chairs, a storage room filled with all sorts of artifacts like a statue, sarcophagi, gold-plated boxes, what looks like a cello, and other stuff covered in drapes or inside boxes. It even has some sort of dining or meeting room, with a table in the center surrounded by 4 chairs, a fancy chandelier, fireplace, and so on. As you can see, aside from the obvious spider themes, the two locations don't share a whole lot of similarities. Even basic things like doors and pots have a completely different design. No object is found in one or the other. Now, does that mean that there's no connection between the two and that they were built by different people, maybe even in different time periods? In my opinion, no. I don't think that's the case. I find it highly unlikely that there just so happened to have been two completely different, disconnected groups of people who both had some sort of spider obsession. It makes more sense that they were constructed by the same hands and approximately around the same time. However, I do think that the two locations had vastly different purposes. One seemingly being a place of worship, and the other a place where knowledge and artifacts were being kept, studies were done, and, well, apparently meetings were being held. The fact that the Swamp Spider House looks unfinished does lead me to believe that the Ocean House was built first, or at least that its construction was completed before the other house. So how old are these buildings? Well, remember how I said that the Ocean House didn't have any visitors? That's actually not entirely true. While there is no sign that anyone has discovered it in the current day, it did have some very unlikely visitors far back in the past, that being foot soldiers from the kingdom of Ikana. Talking to them reveals that they are not the original owners of the house, but instead were sent here to investigate its secrets. As we already discussed previously, Ikana itself is already ancient. The fact that these guys don't seem to know who this place used to belong to or who made it, and that it was already abandoned by the time they got here, is a true testament to how old the Ocean House really is, predating one of the oldest known civilizations in Termina, perhaps even dating back to the time that Stone Tower was built, who knows. Naturally, the next question would be, who were these mysterious people who originally built the spider houses? What was their goal? And what caused them to disappear and abandon these locations? Are they long dead, or are they still around somewhere? Well, as you would expect, there is no definitive answer. As I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of Termina's past is a complete mystery. And to be honest, the question of who isn't really all that interesting to explore, simply because we almost have nothing to work with. There's plenty of potential candidates, sure. The tribe who created Majora's Mask, the people who constructed Stone Tower or the Secret Shrine. Heck, even the Sheikah are not out of the realm of possibility. After all, we do find a gossip stone in one of the houses. Alternatively, it could be a group of individuals we've never seen before and never will. For every piece of evidence, there's an equal amount of counter-evidence. For example, culturally speaking, none of the groups I mentioned earlier have any relationship to spider imagery that we know of. Same goes for the modern-day civilizations. There's not one piece of architecture, old or new, that resembles anything we see inside the spider houses. Not Stone Tower, the Secret Shrine, Clock Town, Zora's Domain, Goron Village, the pirates. The only thing we know for sure is that it wasn't the Kingdom of Ikana who made them. And when it comes to the tribe of Majora, well, we know next to nothing about them. Some even make the argument that this tribe and the people who built Stone Tower might have been one and the same. So instead of shooting in the dark to see which one of these groups was the most likely candidate, I think it's far more interesting to leave that up in the air and instead explore what these people were like, what it is that they were doing, and what their possible fate could have been. Because at least here we have the environment to work with, which does present some very interesting details and possibilities. From the looks of it, there weren't that many people involved in whatever operation was going on at the spider houses. The Ocean House is quite small, and there's only 4 chairs present in the dining room or meeting room or whatever it was used for. They seem to have been a small group who operated in secret. Both houses are located underground, out of sight from the public eye. There's even a closed-off room behind the fireplace inside the Ocean House that can only be accessed if you know the secret code. The room itself is a dome-shaped, ornate chamber, with a circular rug decorated with what looks like twin spiders, a giant web motif on the ceiling, as well as a stained glass dome in the center with even more spider imagery. Also worth mentioning is that the room has no furniture of any kind. Rather than a living space, it looks more like a room where some sort of ceremony or ritual would have taken place. In fact, it kinda reminds me of the boss chamber from the Forest Temple. All this combined, the underground setting, wealth of knowledge, mysterious collection of artifacts, strange masks, a ritualistic room hidden inside a fireplace, it all has a lot of the characteristics of that of a cult or some sort of secret Illuminati group. It's also apparent that the masks may have been involved in some way. There's a couple of them hanging on the walls inside the main corridor, as well as the 4 distinct colored masks next to the fireplace. Granted, masks are a central theme all over Termina, especially in Clocktown, but it's still worth mentioning at least. 4 chairs, 4 masks. But what is by far the strangest feature of the Ocean House are the paintings hanging on the wall of the dining room as well as inside the library, which are depicting none other than Skull Kid. I don't think I have to explain how incredibly weird this is. I mean, what the heck are pictures of Skull Kid doing inside a secret underground mansion from Termina's ancient past, and which has allegedly been hidden and sealed off for who knows how long? It is confirmed that Skull Kid is incredibly old. He was there all the way back in the time of the 4 giants and was even friends with them. When they left, he felt betrayed and neglected, and as a result the Skull Kid lashed out at everyone around him, causing trouble and mischief all over Termina. So much in fact that the people prayed to the giants to intervene, which they did, awakening from their slumber and threatening to kill the imp if he refused to leave. Of course, one could make the argument that perhaps Skull Kid himself once lived inside the Ocean House, but I'm not really feeling it on that one. No offense to the fictional woodland imp, but he doesn't exactly seem like the type that would build an ornate underground mansion for himself, or study and read hundreds of books, collect ancient artifacts, specialize in curses, and hold secret rituals. Skull Kid is a creature of the woods. He might be a menace, but he's not some evil genius. He's a playful, childlike being who, like the Kokiri, is blessed with immortality, and his encounter with Majora was not something he himself planned, and happened purely by accident. However, since Skull Kid did cause a great deal of trouble back in the day, it is plausible that he is well known around these parts, even back in ancient times. Of course, that still doesn't explain why anyone would have multiple paintings of him hanging around in their secret underground house. One option is that perhaps the people who built the spider houses worshipped or idolized Skull Kid in some weird, twisted way. Maybe they had a grudge or feelings of betrayal towards the four giants or the inhabitants of Termina too, and they viewed Skull Kid as some sort of bringer of chaos or something. A bit like how the Yiga clan started worshipping Ganon after feeling betrayed by the King of Hyrule. An alternative would be that some way, somehow, these people knew that Skull Kid would one day play a big role in the destruction of Termina by Majora, like some sort of doomsday prophecy predicting future events. Whatever the case may be, a lot of the evidence found inside the houses does seem to point to this having been a cult of some kind. A small handful of individuals who operated in secret and had access to hidden knowledge, be it in the form of the occult, magic practices, curses, the worship of false deities, or some sort of doomsday prophecy. It's anyone's guess, really. In fact, who's to say that these people didn't have good intentions instead? Just because they were secretive doesn't automatically mean that they were evil. For instance, on the doors of the Ocean Spider House we can find 3 Hylian characters, which when put together form the Japanese word hirake, meaning to become opened up, to improve, to develop, or to be enlightened. What this means exactly for their motivations or practices, I'm not too sure. After all, most cults usually think that they're the good guys. What's certain is that whoever they were, they haven't been around for a long time. So what could have happened to them? Of course, the possibilities are many, so let's cover 2 options which I could at least find some evidence for. And in both cases, the original inhabitants never left and are still inside. Option 1 is that they may have accidentally fallen victim to their own curse. We do find a few regular Skulltulas inside the Oceanside mansion, so maybe this is what remains of them. But in order for this to be true, we have to assume that given enough time, the curse will gradually deprive you of any remaining human features and turn you into a Skulltula for good. Something which we cannot prove, unfortunately. There's also only 3 Skulltulas to be found instead of 4, so either one went missing or managed to escape the curse, or maybe even betrayed and cursed the other 3. It's just a wild guess. I mean, we don't even know for sure if there were 4 individuals involved. That's all just based on the 4 chairs and masks. This leads to option 2. Inside one of the unfinished rooms of the Swamp Spider House, we can find a massive stone monument, and the game's files confirm that it's supposed to be a tomb. If that's true, then who or what is buried here? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to translate the writing. I searched online and asked other people, but apparently the characters are too blurry to make out what it says. The only thing that's almost certain is that it is Hylian writing, so if any of you watching want to take a crack at it, be my guest. The fact remains that it's a very peculiar location for a grave. It has its own unique design, different from other tombstones and monuments in the game, and serves no actual in-game purpose. You can't interact with it or push it open or anything like that. Not to mention, it's pretty damn huge. Quite the overkill if there's just one single person buried here, unless it's a giant. So could this be the final resting place of this mysterious group? Or at the very least one or more of its most prominent members? It could be that they realized that their end was drawing near, either because of old age or some other factor. Maybe they were found out, who knows? It would at least explain why this spider house was seemingly never finished. Maybe they died before they had the chance. Looking at it from this perspective, it also makes the implication of the curse make a lot more sense. Maybe as the group was about to close the curtains on the whole thing, they placed the spider's curse onto their property as a final measure, a way to ensure that no one could take possession of their wealth and secrets after they were gone. Whatever the case may be, they will for now remain one of Termina's many unsolved mysteries, and there's very little chance that this will change in the future. After all, at the end of the day, it's just an insignificant location disconnected from the main story. A video game level where you collect spiders and solve puzzles to get a nice reward. But that's also what makes it fun, to come up with a story where essentially there is none. The less you know about a place, the more freedom you have to let your imagination and creativity run wild. Thank you for watching. A shout out to Salamor for becoming my latest Patreon supporter, and to Francisco Diaz for becoming a member. Your support is always greatly appreciated. Same goes for anyone liking, subscribing, and watching my content. We are now only 2,000 subscribers removed from the big 100k, and when the time finally arrives, I will make sure to do something special again. And that is all for now. This is Don signing off, and have a good one.